Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and some more Path of Exile 2 talk. Today I want to talk about some of the bigger issues that I'm hoping to see addressed in the first big patch that we're now hoping to see soon as they've come back into office after like the Christmas time and New Year's. Now it's no secret that the game launched in an incredible state. But of course, now we've had time, lots of different feedback has come up, issues are occurring, things we just want to see them address. So today we're talking about roughly 10 topics, a bit more than that, the bigger issues that I feel should be talked about. But just keep in mind, whatever I feel, the devs are going to do what they think is best for the game, and ultimately I'm all for that. But let's talk, so let's begin. First things first, let's just get straight to it. This is my mapping tab. It doesn't feel big enough. I don't know if you can tell, but I spend a lot of time going to the reforging bench and messing with my waystones so that it compresses, and ultimately all of these are going to be probably tier 15s or as close to that as I can get. Then I do obviously a pile of tier 15s, and then suddenly I'm left with this in no time at all. This is part of the game. It's a free-to-play game outside of the early access, and so how we resolve this is by having specific tabs for a specific purpose. We have a currency tab, gems, essence, delirium. In Path of Exile 1, you had a mapping tab. So obviously something that we were hoping to see at some point since the early access began was a tab for waystones or mapping in general. What I would like this to include, obviously, is basically all my waystones in an infinite supply. And then also the tablets that you put in the towers, we want the same space there. Kind of like, say, with Delirium, we have our distilled emotions, we have the Pinnacle resources, or essence, you have the smaller and greater. But if you didn't know, there is a tiny trick that we can do. Let's just do it just for the sake of example. So I'm going to take this waystone, I'm going to distill it so that it's actually got a little bit of delirious. And with that, it now goes into this tab. So this is our current best option for storing more waystones, but you can't put them in here until it becomes a delirious waystone. So it's the best option we have. I want a filter, a tab for waystones, for tablets in the same place, please. It would be awesome if we could do the same with, say, you know, the trials coins, because these are stacking up quite hard, and I do run this every now and then. Next, this is the trade website. And as I was going to make this video, something happened. This wasn't the case literally yesterday, but today it seems to be different. What I was going to say is the way that divines are listed completely inaccurately on this website. You'd be at like 5 exalts, 8 exalts, and then you'd hit divines before you'd see 10 exalted orb options and higher. So divines would be piling up right here, and that would actually be really annoying. Now I have to scroll pretty damn far, and in fact, they seem to have got the values about right. It doesn't seem like they've got the values perfect because I'm hitting 2 divine orbs as an offering around 25 exalted orbs, which is definitely not right, but it's undeniably better as of today. I had a quick look and couldn't see anything about this, so maybe it was like a subtle change they've made. But if it is an issue for you, just as a little tip, you can go into the filters and under trade filters, go to buyout price and then change it specifically to exalted orbs. And so that will be the only thing we see. This is a great way to buy and sell things if you can't buy or sell them for divines. Selling something for about 80x because you couldn't sell it for a divine often works for me. And it's also a great way to buy items too. For example, I could not get a bow like this without spending a lot of divines, but instead by filtering for exalts, I got it for 80 and I'm pretty damn happy with that. At the time of recording, obviously it fluctuates, but divine orbs are about 100 exalts, right now almost up to 120 again. So that's where they should start to appear when you're scrolling on the website. And obviously even now it's not quite doing that, but it is better. Now, a larger topic in regards to trading is more about the economy in general. It does feel like your more average player without like a nutty build can definitely spend a long time playing and almost seemingly be further away from actually purchasing they want. There's a lot of discourse, say, around build guide videos and so on, where they're like, right, here's the cost of the build. It's about, I don't know, 3 divines, 8 divines. Not even one that I would consider crazy like 100 divines plus. And people just aren't happy with that. Let me give you a great example of that. The Hand of Wisdom and Action gloves are one of the most commonly suggested gloves in the game, especially for martial classes like Ranger and of course the Mercenary. Even if you're not properly stat stacking, this provides so much value that it's an incredibly common suggestion. And this is listed at a few divines. The price of this has steadily been going down as more people have been running the Breach Pinnacle boss, which is where you might get these to drop. But ultimately, this is like a staple. Most builds of that kind want to consider this, and it's going to set you back at least a couple divines. So it does seem like people are still struggling to reach divine drops or farm enough currency in a natural way. What seems to be the only reasonable way to go about it is by doing a lot of content that's stacked up as much as possible, then generating valuable items. Then you trade those items for value with other players, and eventually build up a sum of funds to buy the things you want. If you understand that and are willing to engage with it, I think you can do very well, and I've been doing great. All three of us on the channel have. But I think it takes a deeper understanding and a will to research and really test and gain experience. Knowing what items are worth selling is obviously an unbelievable advantage. For example, one of the things that we do is find siphoning and attuned wands that are just, pure white normal items at required level 78 or ideally 81. People are trying to craft on these to get really good items. So we know that they have inherent value and you can sell these for a few results. More so if it's a level 81 required wand. But if you're willing to try to RNG craft and you can make something really good, like the ones that have +4 or even 5 levels to lightning skills, alongside relevant spell damage and, cast speed stuff, you can make yourself something very worthy. But all of that requires you understand what the casters are currently after, what the meta builds currently are, and so what is actually valued and relevant right now. If you don't have any of this knowledge, then what are you supposed to do? Currency drops pretty damn rare, you're not swimming in it. So if you're more of an average player with a more average setup and a build and power right now, you can't really do the content that's going to reward you the best stuff anyway. So it definitely feels like the starving starve. And that obviously weighs in with the whole rarity of items found concept. I think it's less controversial or less of an issue these days as more understanding and testing has been going on. It's been found that reaching about a critical mass point of around 100% rarity of items is the bare minimum. Beyond that, say 100 to 200, 200 to 300, way less impact. But if you've got less than 100%, it's kind of a problem. And I say this as someone standing here that has less than 100%. If you didn't know, you can go to your skill page and go to one of the skills and scroll down. Under here, you've got on kill effects, and it tells you exactly the rarity modifier of the stats you're standing here on. It will not track the charms for another 20%, but if you include the charm for me, I have 70%, which is not enough. But to get more into my build, I'm going to have to really sacrifice resistances, defenses, other things that I really do want to run so I can do the harder content, farm it faster, and be efficient. So I'm still wondering whether they might rebalance this rarity of items on gear to be less demanding, maybe? Or maybe it's just going to be part of the game. I don't know. What do you think? The other thing I want to talk about is crafting in general. It's got better. They've obviously done some changes to the currency drops, but it still feels like tough to slam exalts into anything, whether that's a waystone or an item. You need to be pretty aware of what you're doing and careful with how you spend this, because with exalts, you can buy and sell the perfect items. Whereas when you try to craft a perfect item, anything could go wrong. Using outside resources like Path of Exile 2's database can be great for this, and I do make use of this knowledge for crafting, but I always restrict myself even if I have plenty of resources, because very quickly you burn through them. This applies in a rather extreme way when it comes to crafting materials like the omens that are already hyper rare but incredibly expensive to engage with. These allow you to kind of target specific stuff and do target crafting, which would make crafting items a lot more reasonable or possible. As you can see, it's simply not available for exalted orbs. You gotta go to divines, and then we're talking 14 divines. 14 divines for one singular target craft item. It feels ridiculous and unattainable for the majority of the players, I would say. So crafting tools like omens, and thereby ritual and the value of ritual, I would love to see some pretty big changes. Next, let's talk about mapping stuff. There's a few topics here, right? For example, rares. I think a big problem with the whole being one-shot thing and not knowing what you're up against and suddenly being surprised and now you're dead and you've lost everything is the rares and their affixes. Because sometimes, you just turn a corner and dead or nightmare situation, and that's cool. That's exciting. That's part of the game, I feel. But with how insane the punishments are, as we're going to talk about, it does feel like they could definitely do something to help us. It's either you one-shot the scary thing or you're suddenly dealing with a scenario and you need to adapt and react quick before you're caught out. Basically, it's very hard to check what the rare has going on with it, and so I would love to see a visual change so that we can tell. Maybe you could put like a buff on the side of your screen that's like, hey, the nearby rare has these modifiers, and you can hover over that even when you're moving away from it safely. Or they just go further with the visual thing and make scary rares more intense colors or have things above its head that really shows what's going on. There are many ways they could go about this, and I would like to see just any ideas, really, any attempt to do so. But let's talk about mapping now and the one-shot thing. Now, it's a big deal. If you die to a sudden one-shot, such as stepping on a, well, explosive body that wasn't really a clear tell, or maybe a normal enemy just threw one of those dynamites at you and now you're dead. Maybe you suddenly got frozen by an invisible shade that's circling you and is mostly existing in invincible frames where you can't even hurt it. Those shades really annoy me, man. There's a lot of normal enemies that are a little bit strong to the point where they can one-shot you suddenly, even off screen. What happens when you suddenly die, right? You lose 10% of your max XP for the current level you're at. When we're, say, 90 plus, that is hours of work at times. That is devastating. Now you've died, let's say all of that setup you did for that map, such as multiple towers, specifically organizing things so that where you put the tablets hit that map. All that juicing, maybe exalts you slammed into the waystone to get it good. Maybe you corrupted it. Now you've lost your tier 16 or something like that. The boss that was there's gone. All the endgame mechanics like the breach, gone. Not only that, but now you have to do that map again without any value on it. No modifiers or perks or anything. If you want to keep going in that direction, you can't just move forward. Obviously the waystone got deleted. Basically there's just so much punishment if you fail a map, and then so much fear when you're running these maps about being potentially one-shot. This has resulted, I think, in a lot of people running hyper tanky setups, and for most people, a lot of people rather, leaning into energy shield and obviously the particularly strong Grim Feast aura. If they were to nerf energy shield and Grim Feast, I think it would be devastating if they didn't provide an alternative by making armor, evasion, and the other options significantly stronger or more reliable. But that's a whole other topic, really. Basically, you die on a map, incredibly punishing. It feels like if they want you to have one life on a map, they need to pull back on the amount of punishments that you have. Or, obviously, they could go the other way and make it so that if you die on a map, there's some sort of forgiveness mechanic, whether it's using the checkpoint system we saw in the campaign or anything like that. There are many ways they could go about it. Basically, it feels too harsh on both sides, and I feel like they need to pick one side and reduce it. On that note, let's talk about my new ranger that I've been playing for about a week and a half and how I don't currently have any pinnacle points because I have found a grand total of 0 ritual pinnacle bosses. I've just found my first logbooks, finally. Simulacrum is incredibly dangerous, like by far the most dangerous thing to engage with initially, as we'll reference, and then Breach being the one that we're all doing. It feels so punishing to have the pinnacle boss and the points that you're going to earn to make Breach worth doing be behind the pinnacle boss. Well, I would definitely go for Crumbling Walls because it massively improves the value of running breaches. If you get this proc to have an extra breach, that's already insanely double the value of running breaches. Then you can increase the quantity of the splinters that you're actually getting to farm up the next pinnacle boss attempt, and then say the actual density for all the drop potential. It's massive value. And it's completely and 100% locked behind the pinnacle boss, which takes 300 splinters to go farm. Basically what I'm saying is I feel at least the first 2 points on all of these pinnacle or endgame activities should come from the activity, so that I can at least have 2 points to get the thing that makes doing the content worth it or significantly more engaging and rewarding, without the pinnacle boss being involved. How you would balance that could be in a variety of ways, whether that's like the first 2 points come from doing the activity, the remaining 3 section of points, they come from only pinnacle boss, fair enough. Or maybe you do 2 and 2, so the first 4 points, the content, the last 4 points, the pinnacle boss. Right now it just feels overly punishing pre and post pinnacle boss kill. And it makes great sense to actually sell these pinnacle materials and never do it yourself until you're really ultra powerful and overly confident, which means you actually just crush the boss and then don't even really experience the fight. It's very strange design. So I would love to see changes to that personally. Here's a quick talk on the different content then. Breach is so much more valuable and approachable compared to the other options, so why would you focus them and engage with them remotely as much? Basically, all of my tablets, if I could convert them into Irradiation and Breach specifically, that's all I would do right now. Take Delirium with the Pinnacle content Simulacrum. It is simply way too hard and punishing in regards to the normal enemies that exist in that gauntlet as you progress through. As you start, it's not so bad, but obviously every wave they get more affixes, and that can be absolutely devastating to your build. And it's pure RNG. At least with the trials, you get like, I don't know, a 1 in 3 chance to get something not devastating. But yeah, as you get through the Simulacrum, it's basically outstat check it or you fail. The Pinnacle content of Delirium feels too much compared to the other 3. And then on the other hand, you've got things like the Ritual, which is, yeah, it's definitely had some changes. It was a bit bad initially, but they had changed it. Now, it can be bad if, the layout of the map's bad. But otherwise, solid. The problem is that, the boss material, the summoning of the boss for the Pinnacle points to make it actually worth doing, super unbelievably rare. I've never seen one. Between the 3 of us, myself, Cotton, and Josh, we have found one singular boss summon material. You could say the same for Expedition logbooks, which have felt a little bit RNG rare, since, it's been quite a while before I've actually ever found the first one. It feels way too shallow, way too sparse, way too punishing and limited. And then, when you're on the other side of it and you've got like a couple of the Pinnacle boss kills, it's so unbelievably rewarding by comparison. Next, what about the trial stuff? Because there was that big issue of everyone sort of hating both of the Ascension trials. We still do wonder about, right now, what's the percent of the active player base that don't have their 4th Ascend? Or they actually went and bought a carry, which is incredibly common now, where people are paying about 40 exalts, I believe it is, to have someone run through their trial for them while they're in the party. They'll kill the Pinnacle boss, and then I think they join after the Pinnacle boss is dead. They enter the final room, and then they get to ascend. And so if you want to make great money and you can clear the Pinnacle with like 1, maybe 2 people in the party, turning it to multiplayer and it's no issue for you, that's a really valuable thing to do. I'm not sure that's what they want. Maybe it is. I do think Sanctum was resolved largely due to the changes they made, like that initial patch, but also the way that, honor resistance became more of a known thing, the modifiers you get from the relics, which are easy to buy off other players. You can massively improve that experience. On the other hand, Chaos is still very RNG, like you might just have a run be screwed by the wrong mod options as you progress through. Really, you have to stat check through that, otherwise you might encounter a truly unwinnable situation. And so that hits newer, less geared players harder, obviously, like the people who are trying to get their 4th Ascend. I do think overall they're way less in a bad state than our initial experience or thoughts of them, but I would like to see even a little bit more help for like people who aren't ascending still. My suggestion for that would be something like, how you need to have like a 60 plus coin or a 75 plus coin before you can get that next Ascend? Maybe lower that requirement. Maybe for your 4th Ascend, you don't need a 75 plus level coin, but what you can do instead is a 70 or a 65, something significantly lower. Personally, I have no problem with people having a significantly easier time getting their 3rd and 4th Ascends, but I would still want the coins to have a higher max level, such as 80 and 80 plus, because the value of running that content in the higher version is actually really high, and I really enjoy it and I do it regularly. So my opinion of the trials is actually quite positive, but for the people who are still struggling, I would like to see change. All right, I think we've covered more than 10 topics, so I'm just going to talk about one more thing that I want to see and just give some like random examples. It's quality of life. Quality of life is the number one thing that I want to see for this game. And there are so many forms of that. Obvious one is that right now I have an empty socket in my boots. Why is that? Well, it's because I know I might change my gear around based on my amulets and jewels. And so my resistances are going to change around quite a lot. And so I'm standing here not at cap when I could be at cap on cold and sort of be in a better state, because I know I'm going to change this gear around at some point soon. And maybe when I put that cold res into these boots, I'm going to greatly regret it because I can't take the rune or soul core out and put it somewhere else. It feels completely unnecessary, and I think this is one of the biggest points of feedback, a common point of feedback in terms of quality of life, that everyone and their mother has been talking about. Another topic would be, say, the charm belts. Having one charm slot on most belts that exist sucks. It's just like we don't get to engage with the system very much. So having at least 2 charm slots on belts being really common in the endgame, you know, maybe at like required level 70 plus, that becomes really common. Why not? I don't think it's OP, it just feels like part of the game that's just like barely exists. Another quality of life, if I'm looking at my Atlas map, this is as far as I can zoom out. Why? Why can't I zoom further out? It's really annoying. I just want to be able to look around and have to like work out my pathing and where I am. It's not a big deal, but quality of life for sure. Let me zoom out. On that note, could I zoom out further in game? This could help us combat the random one-shots of projectile pack mobs hitting me with a bunch of axes, mini stunning me, which then causes me to die, because it's not like a real stun, or whatever crazy off-screen burst exists. If we could zoom out a little bit more, that could help with that maybe. Another topic would be something like the map designs and the biomes. There are some that are fantastic, that are open and really nice, but obviously there's quite a few that are more offensively annoying. Some chore-like mechanics like augury, where you have those 4 levers around the map you have to go pull. That's like a chore for sure. Or less functional or friendly map designs like the Val factories are really cool visually, but mechanically they're so slow to clear because of the amount of backtracking and the layout of it, obviously. So basically, there's worse maps or less popular maps, maybe a bit of a redesign. Easy fix would be shrink them. Harder fix would be to redesign them to be more friendly for the player to engage with, but keep that feel, whatever they want to do. So yeah, there's absolutely tons of quality of life stuff I could list off, but that's not this video. It's just definitely a big topic and the thing I want to see with the most changes soon. Overall, I think the game is great, but obviously there are things I would love to see. Let me know what you think and if there's anything you would add to these topics or maybe we didn't even mention today. But here's hoping we get a nice quality of life update coming soon. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.